My name is Chua Sao Kin. Today I'm with my group member Tan Xingji, Tan Yifang, and Sim Sop Heng going to discuss about the impact of COVID-19 to global poverty. Firstly, let me introduce what is COVID-19. I think everyone should know what is COVID-19. In late December 2019, an outbreak of mystery characteristic by fever, dry cold, and other symptoms. The happened in a seafood wholesale wet market, the Huanan Seafood Wholesale Market in Wuhan, China. The initial outbreak was reported in the market in December 2019 and involved about 66% of the staff there. The market was shut down on 1st of January 2020 after the announcement of an alert by the local health authority on December 31, 2019. Furthermore, the COVID travel to other countries such as Thailand, Japan, Republic of Korea, Vietnam, Germany, United States, and Singapore. Secondly, let us start to evaluate the impact of COVID-19 to world economy. I could say that COVID-19 have affected the whole market economy. There was an example of industry, which is travel, hospitality, sport, financial, event, and entertainment, health, and education. The coronavirus led the government of many countries to impose non-essential travel to countries affected by COVID-19, indefinitely suspending tourism travel, visas, and immigrant visas. Some countries place a complete travel ban on all forms of inward or outward travel, shutting down all the airports in the country, and most airplanes feel almost empty due to the mass passenger cancellation. The travel restriction imposed by government subsequently led to the reduction in the demand from all form travel, which forced some airlines to temporarily suspend operation. Some travel restriction caused the tourism industry alone a loss of over 20 billion globally, excluding other loss of revenue for tourism travel, and were forecast the cost the aviation industry total a loss of 113 billion according to the IATA. Other than that, based on the April employment data show there was testing effect of the coronavirus pandemic on the labor market. Employment growth noticeable for all group of people. The people employment rate for each major racial and ethnic group was below 6% in February. Before much of the economy was shut down as part of the effort mitigate the spread of COVID-19. By April, the unemployment rate for each group has risen about 14%. That new employment rate reflect the loss of 20 million jobs in April alone. And it is a new post-World War high. According to the latest International Labour Organization, which is ILO data, more than 1 in 6 young people have stopped working since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, while those who remain unemployed has seen that their working hours cut by 23%. The COVID-19 economic crisis is hitting young people harder and faster than any other group. Young people have to face many hard situations, including disruption to education and training, employment and income losses, and the younger have a greater difficulty in finding a job. Next, I would like to pass to my teammate Xingji.
My name is Tan Xunji. I'm here to discuss about the annual change in the number of extreme poor. The graph shows the annual change in the number of global extreme poor from 1992 to 2020. Each bar represents the net number of people who have either moved out or moved in extreme poverty. Before COVID-19, the only other crisis-induced increase in the global number of poor in the past 3 decades was the Asian financial crisis, which increased extreme poverty by 18 million in 1997 and by another 47 million in 1998. In the 2 decades since 1999, the number of people living in extreme poverty worldwide has fallen by more than 1 billion people. Part of this success in reducing poverty is said to be reversed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For the first time in 20 years, poverty is likely to significantly increase. The COVID-19 pandemic is estimated to increase extreme poverty by between 88 million, which is baseline estimate, and 93 million, which is downside estimate in 2020. Considering those who would have otherwise escaped extreme poverty but will not due to the pandemic, the total COVID-19 induced new poor in 2020 is estimated to be between 119 and 124 million. Next. Other than that, here was also some impact of COVID-19 pandemic around the world as the pandemic is spreading across developing countries. The eradication of extreme poverty currently affecting around 680 million of people. For short-term impact, this scenario could materialize if the pandemic was to aggravate existing weaknesses for developing countries, such as high level of debt, increasing business failures, and bankruptcy. Besides that, for long-term impact, the absolute number of people living in extreme poverty rose for the first time since 1997, and absent other measures, we would not expect global poverty headcounts to fall below the level of 2019 until 2023. As a result of long-term scarring, we estimate that by 2030, 588 million people could still live in extreme poverty, and additional 50 million people compared with pre-COVID-19 estimates due to the short of the job opportunities. For those household level, unemployment and loss of income and high healthcare expenditure are the most prominent reason for people to sleep in poverty. As such, people living in countries with a large informal sector, poor or inaccessible healthcare, and a weak social protection system are particularly at risk. As living in poverty usually implies a greater exposure to COVID-19 and its economic impact, the crisis is, in effect, also bringing about a vicious cycle between growing poverty and inequality. Indeed, the most vulnerable have been hit the hardest by both lockdowns and the direct health threat of the pandemic. While People in high-skilled service jobs in the formal sector are more likely to be able to work online from home and thus enjoy significantly more protection. The rich and middle class are also expected to benefit the most from the gains from technological shift following the crisis, while poor households are likely to remain trapped in poverty. Other than that, children from the poor household also suffer disproportionately from the closure of schools as they miss out on essential school meals and may be harder to access digital learning in oftentimes overcrowded and poor connection environments. In addition, those may be asked to take care of their younger siblings, thereby missing schools. That's all for my part, and I would like to pass to the next presenter.
Hi, I'm Tang Yifang. Today I will talk about what is economic inequality. A basic definition of economic inequality refers to the disparity in incomes and wealth in a society. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted economic inequality. Long marginal groups are contracting and dying from the virus at a higher rate. So the worker is demanding assistance jobs who cannot afford health insurance. Dangerous but low wage are a bigger risk. Educate and inform people disagree on whether by what degree and by what means economic inequality should be reduced. Next. Next is about the income inequality. As research, the richest country also experienced largest economic contraction than poorer country in 2020. This result does not necessarily imply a decline in inequality between countries. It turns out that the actual pattern of income decline did indeed lead to a reduction in inequality between countries during 2020. Whether it is measured by the Gini coefficient, the tail index, or the coefficient of variation. Richer countries have more debt per head than poor ones, even though they have better health system, higher incomes, more capable governments, and better preparedness. The decline in new hiring and skill is most pronounced in local labor market that lack depth, in lower incomes areas and in areas with higher income inequality. Next. Next is about gender inequality. From these diagrams, women make up 66% of healthcare workers, and the next is 68% of social workers, and the last is 67% of governments and community-based service. Next. As the economy has improved, this gender gap has narrowed, and as of July 2021, women had a slightly lower employment rate than men, 5.2% compared to 5.6% of men. Next. After that is about the ethnic inequality. Minorities are hit harder and recovering more slowly from the COVID-19 induced downturns. This is true both for workers and small business. In the month of the pandemic hit the United States, 22% of small business closed, while 17% of white owner business failed. 41% of black owner business failed. One reason for this discrepancy is the concentration of epidemic hotspot in poorer community. The pandemic is depending geographical inequalities, with people living in poor areas more vulnerable to the health and economic impact of the pandemic. Next. Lastly is about inequality between countries. As the livelihood of billions of people are destroying, the pandemic is revising the care of programs in reducing poverty, promoting education, and improving health and overall well-being. There are indicated that the pandemic could push at least 100 billion people into extreme poverty. What is more accurate, hunger doubled in 2020 to 260 million people. Most of these jobs are developing countries. The livelihood of an estimate 1.6 billion or 80% of the total are threatened by the pandemic. Next. Next. There are dangerous signs that rising inequality could threaten the stability of political system of national and undermine their ability to address our shared challenge. Lastly, is the short-term impact of the pandemic requirement unprecedented measure to support the growing numbers of employees with record low interest rate allowing this to be financed by debts. Thank you. That's all of our group presentation.